happy to see you all. My favorite state of emergency does not exist. However, my neighborhood, my home and the homes on the street behind me about, 10, probably 10 years ago, it's hard to, 10-ish years ago, um, flooded. We got some crazy flooding and the homes behind us all the way down that street. There was no development west of us. Now Daybreak has moved west of us as well. But I'm the only little neighborhood surrounded by Daybreak that isn't part of Daybreak. And there was no development to the west of us yet at that point. And all of us on the west end of our subdivision got flooding, but the homes on the street behind us flooded bad. And the only reason it's my favorite is because it was such a remarkable opportunity for
I just asked them to turn up the audio if possible.
so much support and
Thank
so
you.
many people from the whole neighborhood and across the area just show up, tearing out carpet, hauling everything out, trying to help save these homes and save these families. So it was terrible, but it was also incredible and a real bonding opportunity, if you will, for so many in our neighborhood to come together and, people who didn't know each other, people just to really work hard to try to save those homes and those families. So that's the most meaningful state of emergency I've ever been part of.
Thanks, Dawn. So I think my favorite was the floods of 1986, and I'm going to say that there are a whole bunch of reasons. The first reason was I was in my 20s, and my back worked a lot better then hucking sandbags than it does now, having experienced that in the last 3 weeks. And the other thing about it too is that I just recognized that, when that emergency happened, there were all the great things about people coming together and helping and saving the city and all that, and it was on the news, it was exciting. But you know what? I didn't feel like I was going to get fingers pointed at me if things didn't go right, So the weight of responsibility that has changed now makes all these things a lot less fun.
Cameron Dill, Director of the League. Thank you, everybody, for being here, both in person and online. Super excited to have you. I guess what I'll describe is during the peak of COVID, my wife gave birth to our second daughter, and so that was one of the special moments during a otherwise really difficult time. And if you recall, the Intermountain Medical Center had a huge American flag that was draped almost the entire length of the building. Well, they draped that flag or unveiled that flag, and 20 minutes later, my daughter was born at the hospital, so we've told her that the flag was for her. My name is Seth Perrins. I'm the city manager of Spanish Fork and replacing Gary Hill on this board. My favorite disaster probably is the last one, not the next one, but the last one, just because it's over. But I'll share some of the sentiment that Mayor Ramsey and Mayor Silvestrini share, that I've always been impressed with the rise in our residents and their resilience, work together, pull together, and get through whatever the disaster is. Roger, you mentioned the slide, the Thistle slide. If anybody wants pictures of that, I can show you what that lake looked like. We certainly hope it doesn't slip right now again, but the Spanish Fork River will certainly be flowing probably here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. Yep. No, it was pretty amazing, and crippled the state in many ways for a couple of years even. But anyways, the last disaster is my favorite one because it's over.
I remember that, by the way, very well. So I'm Mark Johnson, Lehigh City. Glad to be here. I had to look around the room to see if Troy Walker was here, and I don't see him, so I can tell you my state of emergency. Because any of you, I don't know how many of you do this as mayors, but frequently, Mayor Walker will text me in the middle of the night, something that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, right? So some of it's funny because it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, when we had the fire up on the low hills, up on the mountain behind us, it was 11:13. I remember getting the call, running out to my deck, and I can see the flames heading up towards Suncrest. And I'm like, Mayor Walker needs to know about this. So I start calling him, I'm texting him, I'm calling. He doesn't even answer the phone. It's only not even 11:30 yet, right? And I'm like, so I've never gotten even with him, but yeah, found out there was a reason for that. Finally, his fire marshal was able to go get him out of bed. So that was our biggest.
Julie Fulmer. I serve as the mayor in Vineyard. And I think one of my favorite moments was when there was flooding a few years ago, and there was flooding in Moab and in Cedar Hills, or Cedar City. A bunch of people from cities, I mean, there's always volunteers that come out in communities, and residents are always willing to help. But it was really neat to have mayors start a text thread and watch all of these cities and city managers and staffers come out and put sandbags together and send their employees and send their city council and volunteers to go down and fill sandbags during the flash flooding. That was just a really neat experience, not only to watch people come out as community members, but other cities sharing services to help lift the whole state, so. I'm sorry.
Justin Lee, Utah League of Cities and Towns. Utah probably was unnecessary there, as was most of the rest. But my favorite emergency, going back to my old life in the elections office in the state, there's some really bad wildfires in 2012. And one of the fires was coming close to one of the schools where we were holding early voting during the summer. And the county clerk called us up and said, hey, they're telling us to evacuate, but since voting going on, we should probably stay in the school, right? And we said, no, leave the machines and run if they're telling you to evacuate. We'll deal with the stuff later. So it's my favorite thing that one of our election officials is like, no, I'll stay here through the fire in case someone wants to vote.
Wow, I don't know if I can top that one. Kate Bradshaw, Bountiful City Council. Since we spent so much time on flood, I'm going to stay with fire theme. In 2019, we had a fire in the Bountiful Foothills that burned into the city. And I became aware when at 3 in the morning, there was pounding on my front door and our dog had a conniption. And my husband and I said 4-letter words about high school kids and pranks, and then opened the door to Hillside on Fire. And we lost 3 homes, evacuated 800 people. But what was awesome was, no one spent a night in our shelter. We had so much food, we donated it to the food pantry later. Calls and texts from everyone all over offering to help. Our federal delegation offered to help. And if the federal delegation offers to help, that says something, because so often the federal government's unhelpful. So that was probably my favorite, something that made me feel like we're all part of a larger community and it matters. And it helps get you over emails like the one I was just showing Justin I received.
Which was almost my city emergency.
Yeah, one person's emergency. Carrie Malkovich, City of Woodland Hills. All combined, I was like Jeff, the flooding of 1983. I worked downtown Salt Lake, so I got to do some of the sandbagging there. Yes, I was young then, but I worked downtown, and that was my first really big disaster to be a part of, not realizing then after I got on the council that we had the fires of 2018, the Bald Mountain Pole Creek fires, and our city was evacuated for 2 weeks, nearly 2 weeks, and that was a big thing, coming together, calming fears, making sure that there was adequate messaging out about what was going on. That was a real learning experience because of that. Then one of my council assignments is I'm emergency manager for our city. And so that's taken on a lot more things since then. And I've done one post-fire mitigation project, and I'm in the process of doing another. As you all know, federal money does not come right away. It takes years. And so we're still in the middle of the second one. This year we had just over just about nearly 300 inches of snow in our city. And so, yes, we're not really worried so much about flooding because we're on the hillside. We still have quite a bit of snow. It's avalanche danger. I'm still on avalanche watch for our city. And so, you just never know what you're going to be doing in your city responsibilities and what that entails. But we all know that health, safety, and welfare is one of our top priorities, and doing our best, right? Keeping the boots in your car, keeping your phone on all the time and getting alerts from everywhere. And it can be time consuming, but it's something that we do, and it does bring your community together in a really weird way, doesn't it?
Jessica Egbert from Mapleton City Council. Can't imagine having to also be the emergency manager, so props on that. Oh my gosh. Emergencies, well, like some of you, there's some outside the scope of what's official. Like in Mapleton, if you have some developer come in, try to use our TDR system or build high density, which is a third acre or less, it's a state of emergency. But truly one of the best things is it's a fire situation. We had, our mountain went up the year after Carrie's went up just a couple years ago. And it was threatening some very nice homes, a nice neighborhood, and the community came together. Didn't matter who you were in the nice homes, or if you were in a different part of town. Like everybody came together. Didn't matter. But what was extra cool that's relevant here is we had all the cities around us send their trucks too, and so we literally had a fire engine in every driveway that was threatened. And it's a cool photo op, but it was amazing. And this fire came, and the firefighters were fighting it from the decks of the house. And you can see this scar comes literally to the deck in their backyard. And so it was really cool to see people come together. Didn't matter what socioeconomic background, city you came from, it was just all in. And of course, right now we're on flood watch. It flooded the next year, but we had prepared and had everything, and it ran down the street perfectly. And now we're like, okay. But we expect people to come together, and that's one of the coolest things I've gotten to see.
Good afternoon. My name is Dirk Burton. I'm the mayor of West Jordan. My favorite emergency is the one we're having right now. I mean, I got to go skiing just Friday. I had 5 inches of fresh powder on top of a billion feet of snow. It was great. And it's beautiful. Just look at it. It's just so gorgeous as it looks out there. A couple of months earlier, I got to go cross-country skiing around my neighborhood because the snow was all over the place and cars couldn't drive. So I went cross-country skiing. So with this snow, you can go downhill skiing, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, snowboarding, and now it's, pardon me? And snowmobiling, that's right. And now it's going to melt, and we can have something to drink, and we can go whitewater rafting, we can go skiing, water skiing, and boating, and go fishing. Oh, it is just so great. Isn't this wonderful? We got all this snow.
Thanks. I'm Nick Jarvis, the Chief Operating Officer here at the League. Besides the technical emergency we just had, my favorite emergency I had been caught up in is probably a flash flood when we were backpacking and camping in Havasupai Falls, where everyone had to evacuate. A creek not wider than one of these tables turned into a river that had trees knocked down and going down like boats, and killed horses, and we all had to stay in the rec center and the little town on the reservation there. So that was exciting. And then I think we'll throw it to the folks online.
Yeah, folks online.
So if we didn't catch, sorry, we lost internet at one point, but if you caught from what we're saying, it's just introduce yourself and your favorite emergency. And let's go ahead and start with Mayor Tran.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so the favorite emergency, gosh, was one that we've had this last week with a big. What a good thing to have happen for sure. But my favorite part about it is just like everyone's mentioned, the pulling together of a community. When we talk about being all in, our city has been all in. We've had public works people spending the night up there watching the river, because at first we had a huge sinkhole in the sidewalk and the road disappeared. And then we had rain, and it was raining really hard, and so major flooding. And so just grateful for the way that people come together. And I was kind of nervous to go up there to talk to the community because I figured they would be pretty mad, thinking it was the city's fault. And my husband and I went up, and we were greeted by a community of people who were very distraught about their street and their roads and some of their houses. but at the same time, so grateful. Not one person was negative. Not one person complained. All they did was told us how great of a job our city was doing to respond to it. And it was really neat to see the youth groups. And there were these long trains of people filling sandbags, so much so that we felt guilty and started filling bags, and we weren't dressed for it. But it was just a great moment to be able to feel so appreciated for the work that the employees do that I have nothing to do with. And it was a really positive experience. And I don't look forward to more, but I know we're going to have more. And so I'm just grateful for the appreciation that people have for the things that all of us do within our city.
Thank you. Mayor Daines?
Favorite emergency is really an oxymoron. I'm not sure that that works for me. I think my favorite one was in 1983 when I lived right down in downtown Salt Lake, and they put the river down State Street. Our condo was right on State Street, and it was my favorite emergency because it was not in my city and I wasn't in charge of it.
All right, and lastly online, we have Jackie Nostrom, recorder with Harriman.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I would not say I have a favorite emergency.
All right.
All right, Mayor Hill. Yeah.
Brett Hales with Murray City. This was a personal thing, not really a state of emergency, but our son, who lives in Lehigh, 3 months ago woke up to about 6 inches of water in his basement. And he's the kind of guy that can do everything himself. And it was a good lesson. It was horrible. They had just put $50,000 into the basement to have it ready to rent. Renters had just moved in. Their wedding reception was that night, the renters. And they were awesome. Everyone was awesome. And he couldn't find where the flooding was coming from. And 2 guys just showed up about 3 days later. So he'd been going through this for 3 days every morning thinking, is it working? Is it working? Is the pump working? And it just kept getting higher and higher. And anyway, 2 gentlemen showed up and said, one was a contractor, one was a developer, and said, would you allow us to bless your lives like we've been blessed? We don't know much about them. They came in, he sent 8 people from his employment, and they spent 4 days, probably around $30,000-$40,000 worth of work, and found the source. So it was kind of a cool experience for our family.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. You know, those are great stories, and, you know, yeah, nobody has a favorite emergency, but, you know, I think one of the things that we know about each other is that we have great talented people that rise to the occasion, not only in our communities, but among our leadership in our cities and towns. So thanks for all that, and I wish thoughts and prayers to everybody that we escape the snow melt this season without you know, further issues or problems. And I also know, like you know, we noticed with Moab and Cedar City that if we have problems, we're going to help each other out. So anyway, all right, let's get going on the real business, I guess. And I look for if anybody has any comments about our minutes of our meeting of March 2023. Have a motion and second to approve the minutes. If there is no discussion to that, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those are approved. Thank you. And if anyone has a conflict to disclose, I think we have some forms around. You can fill those out. All right. So the next item is we need to have a public hearing with respect to the fiscal year 2023 amended budget. And Cameron, you going to talk about that? Nick, yeah, that's right.
Yes, we'll just need to vote to open and then close the public hearing portion, and then I'm happy to go through the memo.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing on the 2023 amended budget.
So moved.
We have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing is now open. Take it away, Nick.
All right, looks like we have a couple of members of the public as participants, attendees online. If they're, please use the raise your hand button, if there's anything you'd like to comment on the amended fiscal year 2023 budget. And it looks like we don't have members of the public in person, but if I am missing you, please just raise your hand. All right, it looks like we don't have any public comment on that, and we can go ahead and vote to leave the public hearing.
Motion and second to close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me here. So you'll see in your packet, and we mentioned this in our last board meeting, that we've brought forward an amended budget to you for fiscal year 2023, essentially to recognize not initially budgeted revenue. We had West Valley City and the 5 metro townships in Salt Lake County join the league with their membership dues. That is more dues revenue than we had budgeted, that is a major component of what we're recognizing in this budget. We also have increases that we've seen in our registration fees and exhibit space, not the fees themselves being raised, but we've had record attendance at both of our conferences held in this year. We also have a lot more interest revenue coming from the PTIF this year as interest rates have risen. All of that revenue we just need to recognize in a new budget. We will not, so that is a total of $334,000 that we would be recognizing in new revenue. This budget initially contemplated the use of $159,000 in reserves. So total new revenue coming in, we also have some cuts throughout, so those two numbers don't add up, but the total new revenue that we'd be recognizing here is $154,000. Like I mentioned, that comes from dues, conference revenue, and interest revenue as well. On the expenditure side, the most significant changes in the expenditures is $109,000 in our events. As we have more people coming, those events end up costing more than we anticipated. And the cost of putting on those events continues to go up, and we're contemplating that for the fiscal year 24 budget. Any questions anyone has, you can see on the sheet that we've provided, you can see where the decreases in revenue and increases in revenue, as well as decreases and increases in the expenditures are by each item. And if you have any questions, I am happy to answer.
Any questions for Nick? I just want to say that most of those are nice problems to have, so thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, if there are no other questions for Nick, then I'll look for a motion to approve the 2023 amended budget. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the amended 2023 budget. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous as well. Okay, let's go to item 4 then. Board and commission appointments and reports. So Liam, do you want to take us through this?
Thank you. Okay, all right. Angela's handing out a little one-pager right now that's an addendum as promised to the boards and commissions that we had in the original agenda packet. So we have the Uniform Building Code Commission, Utah Communications Authority Board, the Utah Indigent Defense Commission, the Outdoor Adventure Commission, and Justice Court Reform Task Force, all as current vacancies. We received applications from a month or two ago until now and reviewed some of those. And we are planning on filling some today, and we still have some things to work out with some of the different state agencies on the other ones. So we're going to wait on those. As for what we do have right now, staff is recommending that the board appoint Councilmember Krista Hinton of Santa Clara City to the Outdoor Adventure Commission, City Manager Matt Dixon of South Ogden City to the Justice Court Reform Task Force, and Government Affairs Director Sean Guzman of St. George to the Utah Communications Authority Board.
Okay, any discussion, any other nominations? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to approve those appointments.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second.
Thank you.
Express appreciation to the folks that are willing to serve on these boards and commissions as well. Thanks for helping us out on that. So, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you.
There's still more.
Oh, there are more?
There are more. Yep. Sorry, should have done that first. So, and then I do want to mention on the funding for water infrastructure working group that came from Senator McKay's bill. We don't have like an official technical appointment on that. That's just something that they've been talking with us about, including us in that working group. So Justin Lee, our deputy director, will be on that, and he'll be convening a water working group from our members to help him on that. So that's where that one's at. And then Molly, wherever, and then Molly has some information. The UEOC. Oh, yep, sorry. Yeah, so we have additional appointments that come from the UEOC on their subgroups, their working groups there, but we'll get to that in the advocacy section and go over what we're doing there.
Excellent. So HB 499 established 5 task forces statewide to work on a winter crisis response plan in counties of the first and second class. ULCT has an appointment, a non-voting appointment on each of these task forces. There's one in Weber, one in Davis, one in Utah, and one in Washington for the years of for the winter of 2024-25 and 2025-26, so 2 winters, and one as well in Salt Lake County over the next 3 years. This league board appointment is in addition to city membership and voting power on these task forces within those counties. Salt Lake County specifically calls out the cities that have voting power. The others have the ability to determine that through the COG. One point I'll put in here as well, if I may, is that the Davis County COG has already met and put together their task force. And so if you are an elected official from Weber, Washington, or Utah County, we encourage you to make sure that you're up to date with what your county is planning on doing for this task force and making sure that your city is represented when it comes time to that. But as far as the league goes, we need to determine what our strategy is going to be for appointing a ULCT representative to these 5 task forces.
So I'm wondering if it makes sense to I don't know what the deadline might be for that, but, you know, at least in Salt Lake County, there are some enumerated cities that have votes, but then there are other cities from whom or from which 2 representatives will be selected.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know who those are going to be yet, and that's in process right now, but until we know that, it's kind of hard for us to make an appointment that might affect Salt Lake County and otherwise statewide. I don't know what.
Certainly, and I think part of our question as staff was, you know, last year, Cam and I we were present on the Salt Lake County Task Force. And does it make sense to have it be a league staffer, recognizing that if there's 5 task forces, that could easily take up all of someone's time? Or does it make sense to appoint someone from a city to represent the league on the task force, but with that, also kind of recognize the drawback of that may be that, yes, they're representing the league, but they are also likely representing their city. And what does that do to representation on the task force? And those were kind of the 2 we had been kind of questioning as staff. If there's another option out there, we just welcome any feedback from the board as to what that ought to look like.
So I'm open to discussion on this. You know, it seemed to me that the plus of having a league staffer serve in that role would be able to coordinate statewide, be able to use league resources to provide maybe whatever assistance it might come from that. The downside may be whether that creates any issues for other communities if they're a voting member. Are they a voting member or just advisory?
The league member is just advisory.
Okay. Anyway, anybody have any thoughts about that?
So I think it makes sense to have a league staff member. I think while each of the counties have, flexibility to find a solution that works best for their county, having, good ideas or best practices kind of flow back and forth seems like it would be really valuable for each of the groups as they meet. And so having a league staffer that has the time and that expertise and also the insight from what happens at the state capitol to, share that with the groups, but then also doesn't have to worry about being an elected official voting on a plan in someone else's county, feels like, to me, that the better and wiser course.
Can I add to what Kate said? Molly was at our COG meeting on last Wednesday, and it was so helpful to have her there as a league staffer to give us some insight and some backstory on this committee that we created during our COG meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else? It sounds like we have, consensus that it should be a league staffer. So that means we could appoint that person now.
I think we'll wait as the task forces get going. We just wanted the policy direction.
Okay.
If we wanted an elected or a staff for each of the counties.
All right. Well, I think you have direction that we're okay with the staffer.
The other board and commission piece, Liam, is there anything else you had on the boards and commissions piece? The other boards and commissions piece for recognition of appointment is that UCMA has officially moved from Gary Hill to Seth Perrins. So, Mayor Chris, you need to see? Yes. And Seth had to step out to handle an emergency in the city, but he'll be back in just a moment. But we need to officially accept UCMA's appointment of Seth Perrins as an officer representing UCMA. So, Mayor, we'll look for that motion to accept the
UCMA's appointment of Seth Perrins for to league representation. So, Carrie, is that a motion? All right, we have a motion and a second to appoint Seth to that position. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And I'll just say that Seth has already been participating, and I have already personally complimented him. He's doing a great job. So it's hard to fill Gary Hill's shoes, but Seth's doing a great job. So
we're excited to have him, and thank you to the Utah County reps supporting your fellow Utah County manager there. We also have a vacancy on this board of directors. We are required per our Constitution to have a town representative, and our previous town representative moved away from her town a few weeks ago. So we reached out to several board members who have a lot of towns in their districts to ask for potential ideas. So Councilmember Winch, thank you for sending some names, and we'll be following up with different town attendees this week while they're here at the conference. And then our goal is to bring back someone for you to appoint to that midterm vacancy next month. The one other thing I'll add to the work that Liam does with the statewide boards and commissions, it's important for you to know that we as a league appoint now over 75 individuals to now 40 state boards and commissions. Let that set in for a second. 40 state boards and commissions with the additional ones the legislature just passed, to the point where the governor recently actually admonished the legislature to stop creating more state boards and commissions. But we have representation on 40 of them. And so we are doing our best to stay on top of all of those, because those are just the formal appointments, let alone all the subgroups and subgroups of subgroups that come within those formal appointments that we'll talk about when we get to the UEOC discussion. So thank you to Liam for staying on top of all those moving pieces. And if there are people in your regions, elected officials or otherwise, who have said, how can I get involved with the league? Send them our way, because chances are there's a board that individual might be able to represent the league on. Mayor, are you good if we jump into executive director report? Great. Perfect. Well, as I mentioned, we're excited to have you here. Nick, will you make sure the event team is here. We're excited to have you here for what promises to be a record-setting mid-year conference. We have more registrants than ever before. I've been at the league since 2006, and I remember when I started that it was a big deal when we would get 400 people to mid-year. Roger can vouch for that, because Roger's been here since longer than I have, ditto with a few others. We have 534 registered for the conference. I remember when it was a big deal when we made the decision to open up the exhibit hall. And Katie, remind me how many spots are in the full exhibit hall? 92. And how many are sold? What? 85. Yep, 85. So we went from essentially half an exhibit hall to almost an entire exhibit hall, and the revenue that comes with that. And we're very excited. We recognize some of it may be that people are tired of winter and wanted to come to St. George, but we also think it speaks highly to the camaraderie and the professional development that comes from these couple of days. So I wanted to thank the event staff and our team that's been working tirelessly behind the scenes to prepare for the event. In fact, some of them need to go back to finish greeting vendors, but I wanted them in here for the board to officially thank them for the work as we get started.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I just had a brief peek behind the curtain today, but it's a well-oiled machine. They're figuring it out and hopefully make this convention work smoothly, not only for vendors, but also for the attendees, so that people will continue to be interested. And I think that, the engagement when people are coming to these conferences actually helps us in our goal of speaking with one voice and being able to exchange ideas, but also to let people appreciate the value of this organization. So, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. And Angela, Adam, and Katie Harley are two of our behind-the-scenes heroes. Katie's position was authorized by this board in the fall of 2019 because we said we felt like we needed a direct point person who could handle the relationships with exhibitors and sponsors and manage the logistics of the conference. So the board, we had previously contracted all those services, so it cost us more money to bring that in-house up front, but as you can see from the success we've had the last couple of years, it's been, you creating that position was an investment in the organization, and Katie's been phenomenal, as well as Angela and Meg and Alicia and Nick and everybody on the home team that have been working toward this event. So thank you very much, everybody, for the great work. That's a good pivot to talk about staffing updates. A year or so ago, you created or authorized creation of the deputy director position. And some of you probably know this, hopefully all of you now. What we ultimately decided to do as we went through a pretty intensive process trying to decide what to do with that position is we have taken that title and we've elevated Justin Lee, who was the Director of Government Relations. His new title is Deputy Director, and then we promoted Molly Wheeler from Policy Director to Deputy Director. Justin's role is still focused on the Capitol. Molly's role is focused on membership engagement, but they'll both carry that Deputy Director title. Likewise, we promoted Carson Eilers, who has just finished his 6th legislative session with us. Time flies when you're busy, right, Carson? And so he'll now be doing Policy Director and overseeing the research arm and still continue to be that right-hand person at the Capitol for Justin and the team. So first, I wanted to acknowledge that and congratulate them on that role, or on their new roles, and I'm very excited about how the structure is coming together. So thank you to them, and congrats to them.
So, and I'd just like to say, Cam talked with me about this idea, and I think it's outstanding to promote from within, and also to promote with such great quality people that have worked so hard for us at the Capitol. I've watched that happen. Each of them are talented. Each of them deserve these positions, and anything that we can do to retain great people like this working for us is a plus. So thanks, Cam.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. And as we were going through this process, we spent a lot of time as an executive staff, which includes Nick Jarvis, our COO. Nick Just and I spent a lot of time trying to identify what we needed organizationally, and I appreciate the conversations I had with multiple people on the board and elsewhere. By taking this direction and promoting from within, we still have we still need to fill Carson's position going forward, but we also identified, we also identified the need for additional in-house expertise on the legal side. Right now, I am the only attorney who is in-house all the time. We have contracts with several attorneys, including Roger and Todd Godfrey and Sean Guzman, but we discussed that if we created a legal director position that reported to Justin, who's in that advocacy space, but could also provide some engagement assistance and answering questions for cities and help expand the bandwidth in the advocacy space, that would help facilitate this promoting from within process that we did. So what we've brought before you is a legal director position for you to authorize. I'm not authorized to just create new positions. The board has to do it. You can see what we've outlined for a potential job posting and the different duties that we anticipate. Long-term, I have told Roger repeatedly that he's our Tom Brady and that he doesn't have to come to practice during the season. He doesn't have to come to off-season workouts as long as he shows up for game day. And then Tom Brady went and retired twice on me. So now I can't use that line anymore because Roger's still here. We want Roger to be here as long as possible. But as we're thinking long-term about organizational needs, we felt like hiring a legal director now could set us up long-term for when those inevitable transitions arrive. So Mayor Silvestrini, open to discussion and/or motion to authorize the creation of this position.
Anybody have any discussion on this?
I just have one question. Big fan of this, love this idea. Just wonder if you would point out, as far as the salary for this person goes, is it going to require us to change the fees that we charge to our members? Because we've had a lot of these discussions over the years, right? So if you could just explain that.
Yep, no, thank you, Mayor Ramsey. Right now, this is the part why we're asking for the authorization now, so that when we bring you a tentative budget in May, it would contemplate this position. At this point, based on the amended budget that you just approved and based on current staffing and structure, we would not be, this would still fit within the 95% threshold that you set out for us. So the idea would be that what we are budgeting for next year, we would absorb this in the 95% without needing to ask for additional increases.
Well, I'll just say, given the amount of inquiries that we get from member cities that may or may not have legal resources, this is an important position. I think it's also a good idea to have that kind of a person in-house on staff that the staff can consult with about things too. Sometimes that bears on issues about positions we might take on legislation and things like that based upon potential legal concerns in a bill and things like that. So I think it's a valuable piece. And I, while Cam can do some of that, I don't think it's reasonable to expect him to be able to do all of it, especially if it might require additional homework, legal research and things like that on top of the things that he already does.
I don't know how to answer that question, Mary.
He'll go skiing with you.
I don't know if I'm just super fiscally conservative, but part of my concern is that the southwest part of the valley and even, some of Utah County, especially Saratoga Springs and Eagle Mountain, a lot of us saw double-digit increases in our membership numbers. And Harriman City, 17%. And, I know that it's based on the population growth and there were differing factors, but I know Harriman, they had to increase their taxes, but they're struggling to pay for just the principal things. And so I don't know, I just feel like we really need to be careful. I personally think that there should be a limit that no city should ever have a year over year more than cap it at a 10% increase. Because it's thousands of dollars, and for some of these cities that are trying to put in the infrastructure, and a legal person right now in Riverton City, we're thinking we need more in-house legal people, and so should it be charged to the cities that would be using it? So that's just my concern, is that, is the board and the league board just gonna keep, and staff gonna keep increasing? And at what point, because I know there's cities in my area that are saying, you know, I don't know if we can continue to be a member of the league, especially when there's, you know, 25% membership, you know, fee increase. And so that's my concern is, you know, it's probably needed there, you know, but sometimes I know with the city, we're having to tighten our belt and especially some of the cities around us. So I think that that's important to consider.
So at least one thing that I think is important to note in terms, I think you make a good point about, you know, should the cities that use this service pay for it? And in fact, some of them are already, because remember a couple of years ago, we actually raised the dues for some of the smaller cities so there's a minimum of 500 hours because of that kind of thing, so that they would be paying for part of it.
So, Councilmember, you raised some excellent points, and let me hit on a couple of them. Mayor Ramsey asked the question about how we would absorb this into the budget, and right now, we essentially promoted Molly away from the advocacy team into the engagement team. So she's now going to be leading the engagement team. And we promoted Carson, but still in the advocacy team. So right now, as of this moment, we are still a person short in the advocacy space from the status quo. So the thought here was that as we are recruiting to fill in the advocacy team, that you create this type of position which will generate interest from a different type of candidate that helps fill out the needs that we have to represent the communities. The second piece of this is, again, looking long-term, that right now we have people like Roger on contract, but that's not going to last forever. So it's part of it is a succession plan for providing some of the services that we're currently providing. Again, Roger's a valuable member of the advocacy team, and so we want to make sure that the advocacy team is filled out as much as possible to meet the needs. The third piece of this is that Gary Watcott is sitting behind us here. Come July 1, Gary will be our lead person on the local administrative advisor program. And so the majority of his time is going to be spent on that program, which is state funded. So that's great news. The tricky thing is right now Gary has a lot of responsibility in the advocacy space that we will be figuring out how much bandwidth he'll really have for advocacy once he's fully into local administrative advisor. So we're looking at a situation where our advocacy team is shrinking as of right now. And obviously that's the core service that we provide and provide that to everybody. So the thought here was we have a need for this additional legal perspective in a variety of subject matters. And so you'll even see in the document or in the potential job posting, we're looking for certain subject matters to help fill out the advocacy team. And then that person could still help on the engagement side. Todd Godfrey does our legal Q&A service. This person would be a good resource for Todd. But if I were not the director tomorrow, we would not have any positions on staff with any sort of legal expertise. And we looked at a variety of state leagues of our size around the country, and most of them have this type of position in-house. So that's why we thought it was a responsible way to fill out the advocacy team, meet these other needs, but still doing the fiscally responsible way of meeting that, staying in that 95% box that the board has set.
I've got some, oh, go ahead.
So what was the start date?
We haven't said it yet, because once you approve the position and we work through the tentative budget, then we can figure out what's realistic.
So,
one question I emphasize.
Microphone.
We haven't been hiring people as attorneys for a long time. I was never picked up because I was a lawyer. I was picked up as a tax person. I dealt with a lot of other things. Rachel Terry, who was picked up as our deputy director, was hired for that. She happened to be an attorney. So our legal expertise has happened to be, we picked up a lawyer along the way because they did other things. Suddenly, Cam realized with the internal movement, we had nobody who was there as an attorney other than me. And yes, I will leave. and so the realization is maybe we need to guarantee somebody on staff played that role. Well, I vote we just make Molly. That's right. And that was indeed a possibility.
So I might have a different perspective. I appreciate where you're coming from, Ty, but for us, from a smaller community, what I see is, I think Mapleton went up like 18% or something, but in the scheme of things, for the bang for the buck, I don't think we couldn't hire internally, we couldn't spend better dollars on using this. So to me, this money goes a long way, and this is the fiscally conservative choice. So I actually really love having this extra position, and I also see how money is just kind of moving around, even if when or if Roger isn't there, you reallocate those costs, you know. So for me, from a smaller community, well, yes, I have nothing but property tax to fund our entire city, basically. I still see this a really efficient use of taxpayer resources to get a little bit of that attorney and a little bit of this that I couldn't fund another way.
I will echo that. Smaller cities, which represent out of our 250 cities, most of them are smaller cities that probably don't have the ability to have internal. So I have been an advocate for us having someone to go to when we don't need, legal representation individually for those crises that come, but just for those day-to-day things that we need advice on. I think most of the cities in the state have appreciated having that resource. It does add to our overall membership, but it is also one of the selling points of our membership.
Being afflicted with the bar membership myself, I have two questions. One, is it an entry-level type position you're looking for? And then two, is this person going to give legal advice to smaller cities who don't have attorneys? What's the actual duty? I mean, is it just an advocacy, or is this a resource for a city without a city attorney to call and say, give me some advice? Or is that what Todd's doing?
Yeah, excellent clarification there, Mayor Walker.
So I'm calling Todd if it is.
So the answer to the first question on entry level versus medium level, we would determine through the budget process of what we can afford. Again, looking long-term for what happens if and when Roger retires. The second piece is we're contemplating this person filling out the advocacy team primarily, but then being available in a way that a lot of our staff already is to answer questions when they come in, which they come in on a regular basis from cities. With the clear sandbox that we do not provide legal counsel to cities. So Todd can speak to this in detail, because Todd, how many questions do you field a week through the legal Q&A service? 20-ish. Yeah, so Todd gets probably 20 of those calls, and that's on top of his contract with us to work in the land use space in the advocacy. So again, we moved Molly over, promoted Carson. We have that open spot of what Carson has been. And so within kind of the staffing, it would be pivoting that individual at this point to focus on the legal director. And then what we can afford is what we'll promote. And we haven't finalized those details until you needed to adopt the amended budget first so that we can prepare a tentative budget for next month.
So this person will provide some legal perspective on the advocacy side primarily, and perhaps fill some general legal question
Yeah, I
type?
think legal perspective is a good way to put it, as opposed to legal advice.
Okay.
Answering questions.
But like if a small city has some legal issue, I mean, when they call in, what do you do right now?
So right now, when that small city calls, that usually they either call Meg, Todd, or me.
Okay.
And so when we answer questions without giving legal advice. Todd, is there anything else you want to add to that with your experience having done this?
I end every call with saying, you really need to hire an attorney.
Yeah, Todd says he ends every call with, you need to hire an attorney.
It's a man after my own heart, but I just want to make sure, I think we should have someone other than you providing a legal perspective on stuff, because especially if you can get someone maybe not 2 years out of law school, but maybe a few, or maybe they have some specialized, they've clerked somewhere that they can learn it, but it's a pretty broad space to know a lot about the municipal world. I mean, I guess it just depends on what you can afford. I think we ought to do it. I think ultimately it's a valuable part of the team, especially with Roger somewhere going to retire sometime down the road. But I just wanted to know how you were providing, what information. When Todd says it, then they take it as gospel and they go say, well, Todd said it.
Can I say something? I appreciate all of this context and this information, and I asked about how it was being paid for, because I am mindful we have a vacancy. Rachel Terry left. She was an attorney. She was deputy director. She left, but she had that legal expertise background. The restructuring was the right way to do it. I think Cam could have just replaced Rachel with another attorney, but the restructuring with the staff we have was the right way to do it. It's the right leadership. It's the right people in the right roles. But we still have that vacancy. In my mind, I see this as an expansion of responsibility for the vacancy that we currently have. They'll be doing the advocacy, but it'd be really helpful if they also had that legal background. But it's to fill the space that we have that's been filled until now. It's to fill that role, but saying maybe that person could do a little bit more. Maybe it'd be really helpful if they had this background too, because we have this need now that we don't have anybody else with a legal background. So it is creating a new position, but it's only a new title. It's only a few more responsibilities to fill a position that we already had that's just been restructured, but it's still the same opening that we have. We're just calling it something a little different and asking a little bit more of this person, but it has to be filled either way. We really do need that person. This is just saying, you know, it'd be helpful if this person also could, let's add this to it, because we've kind of moved some people around, but let's fill the role that was being filled with someone who can also bring this to the table. And so I appreciate understanding, and it was important to me to know, is this going to raise dues? Is this role going to raise dues? But since it fits into the vacancy that we have had, it's just calling it a different position and requiring more of that person, this kind of expertise. And if it still fits within the parameters that we set a few years back when we said, we don't want to raise dues. You know, we want to keep dues as flat as possible, which isn't always possible. But I think because we've had so many of these conversations, that's exactly why I asked that same question. But because it still fits within what we decided as a board for guidelines, as far as we want to make sure that 95% that we said? Yeah. Fits under that, and it's not going to raise that. And so if you're going to take this back and then look at the budget and go, well, this is how much we actually have that we can pay this person without raising dues, that stays with where we're at. Because of that, and because I do think we need somebody else with a legal background as a helpful rounding of the staff, I would like to make a motion that we approve the position of adding a legal director to fill the vacancy that we have existing already on our league staff.
Second, Tammy Tran.
Okay, thank you. We have multiple seconds, and that was a great discussion. And I appreciate all the viewpoints on that. I do, but I think I agree with what's been said, that it's necessary. So any other discussion on that? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have your direction on that, Cam. Let's talk about Loveless and Lee.
Yeah, before we do that, one other staffing update. Alicia Richmond, our communications director, this is sad news, but she'll be leaving the league at the end of next week to become the Utah State University communications director. She'll have a great opportunity to work with her daughter, who will be like directly underneath you, right? Yeah. So, yeah, she'll be. So we're sorry.
Is that up for a vote?
I wish it was.
If you really want that challenge.
Yeah. So we'll be recruiting to fill her position after the conference. But just wanted to say thank you to Alicia for the good work as communications director, and excited for this really unique opportunity she has to work with her daughter at Utah State as their communications director.
I do think we should change the door now to the league.
Yeah.
Apparently it's a revolving door, and I think we need to change it to a fixed door.
Yeah, we should have done that as part of the remodel.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, so in terms of key objectives for the next hour and 13 minutes or so, part of what we want to do when we get to item 6 is to break the board into smaller groups to talk about priorities. And in a way, you've already done that. The legal director discussion was super helpful to make sure that we are both staffing and providing services in a way that best meets the needs of your communities, and doing so in a financially prudent way. So put a pin in that. Mayor Silvestrini, I'll let you take the motion on Love, Listen, Lead, and then will set the stage for the small group discussion.
Yeah, so Love, Listen, Lead, yeah, most of you are familiar, was a task force that we had, basically to respond to the controversies about policing, with respect to George Floyd and all that controversy. And I actually think that the task force served its purpose in making some recommendations and to the legislature in that subject area. And also, I think just the engagement by our cities and the fact that we invited in representatives from, from NAACP and other organizations that were, legitimately concerned about police issues. I think we calmed the waters a little bit. We came up with some practical reforms that didn't, that still preserved the goodwill of our police officers. We involved them in the conversation, and those were actually terrific discussions. But we've kind of come to the end of the road on that. This task force hasn't met in a while, and there isn't any, as far as I'm aware, pressing need for it. So we are going to propose that we disband the Love, Listen, and Lead Task Force at this time.
Mayor Shepherd, you and Seth Perrins, as well as Mayor Silvestrini, were 3 of the 21 members of that task force. Anything you'd like to add?
Nope, I think we've served our purpose, and I think as Mayor Silvestrini said, I think we've accomplished what we set out to accomplish, and had some great work and advocacy come out of it. So I'd make that motion that we dissolve the Love, Listen, Lead Task Force.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to dissolve the task force. Further discussion? I want to thank everybody who participated on it. Those were terrific discussions, and those of you who had police chiefs that participated, they were super valuable input, and actually I think we all learned a lot, and we avoid making some mistakes that we might have made had we just acted on a knee-jerk basis. So that was super valuable, I thought. So.
Well, and Mayor, as I'm looking around the room, there are quite a few people who were not on the board when the board created this task force. So I'm going to take 30 seconds, just say the names of who was on the task force, and we'll acknowledge everyone publicly at the conference tomorrow. But American Fork Mayor Brad Frost, Clearfield Mayor Shepherd, Grantsville Councilmember Jewel Allen, now former Mayor of Mayfield, John Christensen, former Mayor of North Logan, Damon Cann, Salt Lake City Councilmember Ana Valdemoros, South Salt Lake Mayor Cherie Wood, Spanish Fork Mayor Mike Mendenhall, and St. George Councilmember Danielle Larkin. Police chiefs, former Bountiful Police Chief Tom Ross, Lone Peak Police Chief Brian Gwilliam, now former Police Chief in Ogden Randy Watt, South Jordan Police Chief Jeff Carr, West Jordan Police Chief Ken Walentine, Woods Cross Police Chief Chad Soph. The attorneys were Ogden City Attorney Gary Williams, Park City City Attorney Margaret Plain, Salt Lake City Deputy City Attorney Mark Cottrell, and South Jordan City Prosecutor Ed Montgomery. And the city managers were Wayne Parker, CAO of Provo, Dave Bricky of Riverton, and Seth Perrins, as you know, Spanish Fork. We're the only ones in the country that I know of that brought together elected officials, police chiefs, attorneys, and managers in this way to try to serve that dual purpose of ensuring community trust in police while also honoring and supporting our officers for what they do. And I served on an NLC, National League of Cities Task Force on policing, where it was markedly different than the process that we had here. And I'm really proud of the 20 consensus bills that we passed a couple of years ago and the Garrity bill last year, and the policy platform that committee brought back to the full membership last year. So again, I think it's a job well done, but I also think the time is up and we can move on with it. So we just need a motion to dissolve it since it was an official creation of the board.
To do that, so if there's no further discussion, all in favor of dissolving the task force?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you.
Could I get that motion and second? Motion and second?
Mayor Walker.
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, next, everyone should have a copy of this. Those online, I don't know if we've emailed it to you or not.
It's in the packet.
But it's in the packet, perfect. 2 documents in front of you. Document number 1 is this postcard, local administrative advisor, that will be circulating to folks here at the conference. This money will become available July 1. And to our knowledge, this is the first of its kind program in the country. In fact, the City Managers Association just wrapped up their conference, and we've been attending it the last couple of days. There was the president of the International City Management Association was here, was really excited about this program and said He wanted to stay appraised of it because if it works in Utah, it's something he'd like to look at replicating in other states. So Gary Watcott on our team will be leading that effort. Molly and Liam will both be involved with it going forward. But this just gives you the snapshot of the local administrative advisor piece. The annual report is something we started printing a few years ago to summarize everything that we do for the membership, broken down into the three categories, our three divisions of advocacy, engagement, and operations. Please take a minute to look through the report while you're here over the next couple of days. We'll be distributing this to all attendees, and we'll be mailing it to every city to, again, make sure they recognize the return on investment for the taxpayer hard-earned dollars that they contribute to be part of the league. We are at 99.6% membership this year. We had one town that did not participate, but everybody else did participate. And we've been in touch with that town, and we'll continue to work with that town to try to bring them back into the fold.
On that note, can I just mention that, if I may, West Valley City's mayor, we serve on the Water District Board together for Jordan Valley Water. And she mentioned to me last time we met last week how glad she was to have West Valley be part of the league again. So just FYI, they're happy to be here.
Yeah, and we're happy to have our second largest city as a member of the league too. That's where they belong.
Yep, I agree. We're excited to have them. Some of them will be here at the conference this week. I also should have noted that Tim Shriver, who's our keynote speaker tomorrow, he's a national expert on civility and trying to bring people together. And the Dignity Index is a national effort, but Utah really is the test case for both the Unity Project and the Dignity Index. And we're the first state league in the country to try to partner with both of them. So when you hear from Tim tomorrow, just know that his message about unity and civility is hopefully the first of many as we partner with the University of Utah on both of those projects. There are other scholar in residence is Arthur Brooks, and Arthur was our keynote 2 years ago, and we're going to continue to try to tap into Arthur Brooks as well during this 3-year period of time that they are scholars in residence with the University of Utah. So part of this report is helping the membership recognize that we're doing things here in Utah that aren't happening in other places in the country, and we're doing it to try to help you serve your communities. Okay, so again, take a look at the report. The executive team, let's just jump right to strategic goals and objectives. Does that work? Nick, in the board packet, will you pull up the strategic goals and objectives? Because this will set the stage for the small group discussions here in just a few minutes. We are working through the bottom portion of this document, but what's highlighted in red are what you approved last spring as the board of directors goals and objectives, ongoing and term-based. I'm going to have the deputy directors and COO reference the relevant goals and objectives for their respective divisions. And I think you can incorporate a few of the things from the report, but really the key question we want you as a board to answer for us is, are these still the right goals and objectives going forward in the next fiscal year? And are there things we need to add and or remove from what's on the list? Justin, let's start with you on the advocacy side.
All right, so we have 2 goals here at the top. Ensure that ULCT policy platform and priorities address critical and relevant policy objectives. Just as looking, and you can see this in the annual report, but past 2 summers we've done surveys of our LPC members. We've also, of course, had discussions around what we should prioritize here at the board level. Of the 30 policies members were most comfortable with in the LPC survey, 18 of those have been achieved. Of the 30 policies we were the least comfortable with, 24 had appeared in bills, but only 2 of those ever went anywhere. We've either been able to amend or stop a lot of those things. On the second one, provide direction to maximize political capital at the capital for municipalities. Does anyone know how many bills we tracked this last year? There's a quick quiz to see if anybody's reading the report yet. 244. Councilmember Phillips, you win. 244 bills. Anybody remember how many we tracked last year?
Less.
100
Less. Less than that. 168 last year. Of the 244 bills that we tracked in 2023, 152 of those bills passed. So I'm not really good at math, but 152 is pretty close to 168. So as many bills passed this last year, almost as we tracked last year. So I think we're actually doing a fairly good job of 1 and 2, but would love any thoughts about whether this is still goals we want to have, or if there are any amendments to that kind of language, or thoughts about how we either maximize capital or make sure our policy platform is addressing the most relevant objectives.
Well, you know, put a lot of time and effort into really changing some key legislation this year. I don't see that most of those issues are going away. We're already starting again on the same issues. So how do we become sustainable, and especially those of you who are staff, the same issues, and just feel like we're starting at ground zero every late spring, working up to. And I know that last summer, Dawn was the only no vote on several things, and by the time legislative session started, we were able to get things changed. The same thing is happening, so I guess it's more of a mental health aspect and sustainability of the league overall when we establish our policies, knowing that they're just going to they realize they can't give us a whole thing because we are out there fighting. The league army is here. But if they're going to just piece it in some sort of strategic way that they put something big, we have to come back, but we still have to compromise, so they still get whatever is happening to be big changes to cities along the way. I mean, I guess I'm just asking kind of more a rhetorical question too, is are we sustainable in knowing that that's part of their strategy, as well as are we always going to be on the defensive?
So Carrie, I'll take a crack at that before Justin. So I 100% agree with you that it's a concern. And I wonder sometimes how our staff can come back year after year after year when it seems like they're fighting some of the same battles over and over again. We're in the same boat, right? It's demoralizing, in some respects. There's a couple things though that I think may be different. Number one, we have been spreading the message that whenever we had a chance to do it, that we need to. Some of these things we need to pause and see if the solutions that have been implemented are working. It doesn't make sense to write the new bill when the ink on the old one isn't even dry yet and we don't have the data. We've been trying to convince legislators to operate on the basis of data rather than anecdote. We've stressed that, and frankly, our membership has been awesome in providing that data so that we've been able to make those kinds of arguments. And then the other thing I'll say is that there were some bills this last session, not all of them, but there were some bills that were retread things that didn't even make it out of rules this time. Yep. So I don't know if that reflects the fact that we're making some headway there, but there were some things that I thought we were going to have to fight, like the eminent domain bill. That never made out of rules. And so maybe others are getting that idea too, I don't know, but it is frustrating.
So one quick thing that I'll mention is, I don't ever get too concerned for a bill that shows up, even if it's the same bill year after year, if it's not going anywhere. There are bills that will show up in perpetuity, and I don't worry too much about those. And there is always going to be an aspect of defense, because we're trying to maintain something, whereas, and you get new legislators in all the time. So from the mental health perspective, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm just jaded, so I'm fine. I've been doing it for a while. I just know how it works up there. But I think we really, from a mental perspective, also just need to realize that the bills that get introduced are far less important than the bills that ultimately pass or do not pass by the end of the session. I'm not too worried what shows up on day 1. I'm worried what shows up on day 45. Yes. And our track record the last few years has been very good by day 45.
Well, we appreciate all that you do, and that you engage all of us as league members to help in that. And even if it's just a little part, I know that sometimes cities feel the frustration themselves because they're not the ones at the table figuring it out all the time, right? Some of us are, but not every city, and they see the news and the anxiety raises, and I think it just gives us a good opportunity to again show how important our connection with the league staff is to
make this better for our whole state. And we just have a lot of opportunities, but I know you are run ragged during that time period. And I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. Just to, yeah, Mayor, let me pass it over to you.
I don't know if I need the microphone, but I'll take it if you're going to hand it to me. So I'm going to bring something up. Cameron and I had this conversation, I think, when we were back in D.C. And it comes in line with the last comments. There's a lot of things that go on. Every city isn't represented here. Well, they are, but they're not on the board, right? And so some bills get passed, and a lot of cities don't even know the impact on their city until it's like too late. I mean, we're represented, but we were impacted pretty badly by a bill that passed this last session that we didn't know about. So I've made a proposal to a few people. I don't know what the process is or even if we're allowed to. I would love to see a bill proposed that would force any law that is laid out up on the Capitol Hill, that it takes 1 year before it can take effect. In other words, if it affects any political subdivision, municipality, special service district, school district, whatever, I don't know what we'd have to do to propose that and get behind that. I would think every mayor, every municipality, every district would be interested to have more time to digest any changes in the laws that affect them. I kind of feel that if we could get a few sponsors, local representation to sponsor a bill like that, and they see that every single district, every municipality in the state would support that, a timeline. I mean, for crying out loud, Texas, they can only propose a new bill every 2 years, right? That's it, right? So why can't we do something similar here where we have more time to actually digest the impact it's going to have on every single community in the state? That's all I'm going to suggest.
So in the interest of time, and Mayor, I think that's a great idea. I will note quickly that every time a committee chair or the UEOC has asked us what we want to do this year, I've told them nothing, and no one has taken me up on it yet, but we're working it. We're about to break up into small groups and talk about these more in depth, so I don't want to lose too much of that conversation here at the table. So Molly, how about have you cover your two topics really quick, and then Nick, wherever Nick went, hit yours really quick, and then we'll talk about the groups, because we're going to talk about these more in depth in our groups. So Molly, I'll kick it to you.
Sorry, I got locked out on my computer while we were doing that. I'll just read it from the screen. So, thrilled to present on the engagement piece. I've been in the job for a week, so I am well equipped to speak to everything we've done. So number 3, engage with ULCT membership in geographic regions and or communities of commonality that you represent. Over the past year, we've been pretty engaged with this, getting out to the AOGs. We were able to get to all the AOGs in the last year, right, Cam?
No, we missed one.
We missed one, okay. And so 6
Sorry,
of this.
Justin, we'll get there, we'll get there.
Yeah, and then we've also tried to visit as many COGs and COMs as possible as well throughout the last year. Additionally, with the Your Land, Your Plan program, we've been able to take that out regionally as well and visit those. We have 2 more remaining, one in Richfield and one in St. George. That will be on May 2nd and May 3rd. And then beyond that, our 4th is ensuring that conference programming and trainings are relevant and valuable for all attendees. This is something that we've been working on. I'm really optimistic that with bringing Gary online, we're going to be able to create more of kind of a rural specific track at our conferences for folks that creates some applicable programming for our members within that area. And yeah, and so we're looking at that and ensuring that we have relevant things for folks, and we'll be surveying our members on what content they specifically want to see. But even for this conference, I'm really excited for the workshops and speakers we have aligned. Nick, what you got?
All right, thank you, Molly. I'll cover a couple of these operational goals for the board. Number 5, ensure league operations are accountable, efficient, and transparent. I wouldn't think that goal is really going anywhere. That's a role that you as a board have to have. To speak to that a little bit, so these were our 2022 goals. In that year, we did establish a finance and audit committee that found a new auditor along the state auditor's recommendation that you need to go to bid every 5 years. And we finished that audit with 0 findings, which was first time in a while that there was absolutely nothing clean sheet with our finances. So that was in furtherance of that goal. And also the sixth goal, to have membership dues cover 95% of ongoing non-conference operations and personnel costs by fiscal year 2024. When we adopted the dues when you adopted the dues in January, we are set to accomplish that goal on time. We talked a little bit about it in our amended budget and in some of the reports, financial reports, budget reports I've given to you at previous meetings, but we're in really good fiscal shape. We have the state appropriation coming. We had the Your Land, Your Plan grant where we can do some additional things with non-dues revenue. So our operations are looking great.
So Mayor, if I may, I wanted the three division leaders to walk through these 6 goals, because ultimately this is what you approved a year ago. And we're going to break up here in small groups in just a moment and to talk about your priorities as a board in these 3 areas of advocacy, engagement, and operations, so we can have these smaller group discussions. And then when we come back into a committee of a whole, if people are still comfortable with these goals and objectives, then we can reapprove them as is. If, based on the discussion, we want to make any sort of tweaks, we can do that. Or, we can approve them in May, but we wanted to make sure we had this regular check-in back with you. So now that you've got this in your mind to set that up, Justin, I'm going to ask you to just take a moment to, it's the handout in the packet, Mayor Silvestrini down in advocacy and engagement. It's the UEOC meeting presentation and the interim study items. Just to take a couple minutes and show on the screen the amount of items that are still out there. And Councilmember Malkovich, this gets to your point of how old things are new again. And sometimes the cycle just continues. But just so you are already aware of what's on the docket, but then we want to know from you what else should be on that docket, so we can prioritize our time and bandwidth accordingly. Justin, do you want to do that? And then Mayor Ramsey will give you the last word about the UEOC, and then we'll break into small groups.
So yeah, two things, 2 different groups here. One, the UEOC. We talk about the UEOC a lot because the UEOC is doing a lot. UEOC, I have a handout here if anyone would like to read it, but 6 pages of everything that passed through the legislative session that the UEOC is taking credit for in some way, shape, or form. We currently have what we're referring to a little bit as favored nation status in the UEOC, and that we're one of the only outside groups that has someone on every single working group in the UEOC. Mayor Ramsey and Cam continue to serve on the Growth and Transportation Group. On the Water and Energy Natural Resources, Layton Councilmember Tyson Roberts is serving on there, and I work with them. Mayor Tran is working on Technology and Innovation. We have South Ogden City Manager Matt Dixon and Cottonwood Heights Councilmember Sean Newell on Government Efficiency. We have Orem Councilmember Tom McDonald, Salt Lake City's Andrew Johnson, and RDA Director Danny Walsh on Housing Affordability Membership. And despite Cam's efforts, we're going to make him keep working on that. And then, so we have a presence there, despite Mayor Ramsey being sometimes the lone no vote, and I will say sometimes the voice of reason on some issues. They continue to invite us into the room. So I think that does speak to some of the work we've done over the years there. On the interim study groups, and then Mayor Ramsey, I'll kick it over to you. It's a multi-page document. I just want to highlight a few things that we know we'll be looking at this year. One, water issues. Despite the snow, we're still going to be talking about water and what we need to do there. Lids and DIDs is coming back. Both the UEOC and and a couple different interim committees want to look at that. So whatever the acronym ends up being, there's no question we'll be talking about infrastructure districts this year. There was a bill on the TIF audit that did not go anywhere. We expect that to be there this year. There is going to be a discussion around metro townships and whether or not they should continue to basically exist or have to be annexed into surrounding cities. So if you have a metro township nearby, Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County cities, then you want to keep an eye on that one. We are going to be talking about property tax in several different ways. And Mayor Randall, just for fun, adult-oriented entertainment bill, still around. Still having discussions around that one too. So there's a long list. As you look through this list, which I know you all do every night, if there are things you think that are missing or as we get into this conversation, in these small groups, as always, please let us know what things we should be prioritizing or looking at. So Mayor Ramsey, I'll let you talk really quickly on UEOC.
Yeah, and before I turn it to Don, I mean, this goes to the futility thing again, but I mean, some of us were at the bill signing that the governor held in Harriman yesterday, where he signed bills relating to transportation, housing, and homelessness. And, there actually was recognition by not only the governor, but also by legislative leadership of the contribution that the league is making. And I think we have kind of maybe broken through a little bit by making some proactive type of suggestions. So that's one of the things when we get together and talk about in these groups too, be thinking about things. And there's another document in here, I don't know who's going to talk about this, but this is a framework that kind of like talks about, do the proposals that are being, debated actually move the needle on the goal? And that's one of the areas where I think we've been able to rein in some of these bad proposals, is like, how does that advance the goal of affordable housing? Anyway, we are making a difference with that, but we are more effective when we can actually make affirmative proposals and be able to agree to things.
Thank you, 100% agree. We had the opportunity at UEOC this last week to thank some of our legislative leadership and state leadership for working well with us, I think better than maybe ever before. A lot of progress was made this last session. We made a lot of progress and were able to influence for the better a whole lot of proposals, a lot of them. And I agree, I think we've kind of broken through a little bit of a barrier that we've been up against, and we will continue to be. But since the session, we've had several people from the Property Rights Coalition, from just all over the place, who have said, hey, that was quite a session, but we just appreciate your work, and thanks for coming to the table. Thanks for all the work that cities are doing to work with us, and in the end, everybody was okay with how things ended up. I mentioned that at the UEOC and just said, I don't know if a year ago any of us would have thought that it would have ended up the way that it did. But I also pointed out how many of these different proposals our board supported, and I agree, being proactive in bringing some solutions to the table is very good for us, really good. Then we're not always playing defense and feel like we're playing defense, but we can help craft that. I think that's appreciated. Anyway, so much great work. Thank you to the League Army for coming out, for being part of it. There is a lot that will come up this next year, but one thing, pay close attention when you get a chance to hear from Natalie Gochner. She gave the best presentation I think I've ever seen her give, and that is saying something, because she's brilliant, and I never not thought that. But this was exceptional, about the new Utah. It's the future of Utah, but it's the reality of the new Utah. We are a new Utah, and we look different than we did 10 years ago, and we look different than we ever have, and it's not going to change. We're not going back. So pay close attention to what she has to share, because really it's such good information for us as policymakers to consider. And as a result of her presentation, Speaker Wilson talked about quality of life. We had a little discussion about quality of life, and that's one thing that UEOC is going to make a forefront topic as we consider all of these policies, is what impact does it have on quality of life, not just today, but 10 and 20 years down the road. And so as Cameron and I, after the meeting, were talking about what kind of input do we need to gather from all of our membership to take to the table and to take to UEOC. What does quality of life look like in your community? Not just next year. As leaders, we have the obligation to have vision and to see beyond the immediate future in our fast food world that we live in. We have to have vision. What does quality of life look like in your community and in the state of Utah in 10 years and in 20 years? So I'm going to ask you to think about that. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Nick, will you pull up the UEOC draft framing principles? We're not taking action on these today. This was to get your thoughts going for the small group discussion, but we do need to make a decision, or we will ask for your vote in May, because the UEOC has to prioritize their topic list on May 31st. So over the next few weeks, as we're gathering feedback, including here in a moment from you, on the different potential proactive policies, We wanted to come up with a UEOC-specific framework in addition to our normal prism on how we look at bills. So you can see, don't worry about the wordsmithing right now, but the concepts were around quality of life, an actual nexus to affordability, a nexus to home ownership, the actual reasons, the problem we're trying to solve, and infrastructure costs. So due to time, we won't talk about this one today. Just know we'll ask you to approve this type of framework in May, and we'll ask for your feedback electronically over the next few weeks. Right now, we're going to break up into small groups, going back to those board goals that we talked about. In light of what you know is coming at the UEOC and what you can expect to be coming with legislative interims, we want to know in the advocacy space, what should we be prioritizing? In the engagement space, what else can we be doing to serve our members across the state? And on the operations space, is there anything we should be doing in addition to what we're already doing? We're going to break up into small groups around each of the whiteboards. The executive staff will be circulating, so that way everybody gets a chance to ask a follow-up question of Justin or me or Nick or Molly, while the other league staffers will be at each whiteboard taking notes. So we'll break out of the committee of the whole, and then we'll come back in approximately 4:15 to give enough time for that small group discussion. Then we'll come back as committee of the whole, discuss those things, and then if you're ready to reapprove the goals from last year, we can do that. If you're not ready, we can do that in May. Any questions about what we want to accomplish in the next half an hour or so?
The one note I'll just make, so for example, in advocacy, you could say, I want to cover this topic, or I want to work on this strategy. It could go, It's pretty open-ended, whatever you want to talk about there.
Yep. So, Mayor Daines, we'll have you and Jackie in a group, so just hold tight. They've set up speakers to allow you to participate in one of the groups. So this corner over here is Group A, so that's Mayor Ramsey, Mayor Shepherd, Group C. I was about to say Manager Perrins, but how about just Seth? Yeah, that's what I thought. Councilmember Phillips, Mayor Fulmer, Councilmember White, and Mayor Tran will be Group A here. Group B, which is that corner, will be Mayor Silvestrini, Councilmember McKay, Mayor Randall, Mayor Johnson, Councilmember Malkovich, Mayor Hales, and the online participants. Group C is that corner, Mayor Kafusi, Mayor Walker, Councilmember Winch, Councilmember Bradshaw, Councilmember Egbert, and Mayor Burton. I don't think I missed anybody. I'm looking around the room of our electeds, and okay, good. Nobody's raising their hand that I missed them. So we'll come back, committee of the whole, approximately 4:15. You can head to your corners. You're Group A.
Okay, online attendees, we're going to switch up some mics and speakers, so hopefully this will work out for you to participate in Group B right here. So hang tight as we do that. They should be off. Yep, and I asked Liam to do those, so you can check those. Okay, Mayor Daines, would you mind just speaking a little so we could hear
Yes,
where
I'm
you're coming
here.
from?
Thank you for trying to include us in these small groups. Well, that's probably challenging.
Okay, we're still working on it.
If my name's not on the board,
And if it doesn't work, I can kind of check back in at 4:15 when the full group reconvenes.
So I switched the speakers to here, but I can't hear her. And Mike's speakers are still in the room.
I can hear you, so I can just listen.
This is, this happened. You want to, yep, absolutely. That's it.
That's the thing that got us an LPC. I'll try that again.
Okay, Mayor Daines, can you try one more time?
There, can you hear me now?
Yes,
If
and we
not-
hear you where we're supposed to, so excellent. We're gonna have a mic set up right here near this group. Hopefully you can catch some of the conversation, and Carson will be helping out facilitating that. So just let him know if it's working or not. hopefully we get it
Great.
to work.
Thank you.
People online too?
Yes, Mayor Davis is going to be participating online, so we'll have computer speakers and
I'm not offended.
I'm here to help. Carson and I are here to help facilitate and write notes. It's really your discussions. Mayor Silvestrini has the original points. We had the 3 areas: advocacy, engagement, and organization. So really, this is your time to discuss and us to just take sort of notes. Do you want to start with one in particular? Or do you have
I was
thoughts?
gonna say, we're floating around to each group, so if we could do engagement first,
Okay.
then that would be helpful, so I can hear what I need to do better. And then you can,
We'll take that.
This is engagement with membership, yes.
education, conferences.
Get people to open their email?
Oh, Lordy, what if I could, Councilmember Wood, if I could?
I mean, I think about all the things that you do, right? All the things that are being done right. Do we need the microphone because of everybody? Oh, sorry, Mayor Daines. I forgot, we have to do for both. But, I mean, we get the Friday facts, we can sign on every single day to the briefings. We can go on Monday to the LPC meetings. We can, I mean, we can see you there. We can call you, we can text you. We don't in the middle of the night very often, but sometimes, you know, when we have a question. So I don't know how we showcase it. Maybe at the conferences, just have that an engagement session for people who are new to say, do you realize we have all of these things in place?
There's no excuse for not knowing what's going on.
So for the folks online, Mayor Randall said there's no excuse for not know what's going on. My question is, do you think that we need to be more strategic and that we contact people so much that they don't, like we send out so much stuff, or that we do so much stuff that people are like, yeah, I don't need to read this, what else could be new? Or do you think it is like, I think like, yes, during the session, like those daily things are helpful. Yeah.
The only thing that
Can't speak
frustrates
without the
me this
microphone because
last,
we've got our hybrid friends with us. And it gives me this sense of importance. Yeah.
can you hear me?
I think if we didn't have that, we'd be in trouble.
Okay.
So I think people are always going to self-select. Not everybody's going to read every email. There's sometimes where I find I have time to go through it. There are other times where I go, oh, that's Friday Facts, and I'll have to look at that later, and sometimes I don't get back to it. So from my perch on as league president, what I think is super valuable is actually personal contact between league officers and league board members and member jurisdictions. And, you know, I'm going to continue to do this year, where we go around to the AOGs and meet with people. We're doing a training down in Richfield again this spring, where cities can come and get some help. But I also think it would be useful as if board members, if we would even just get like an assignment of, staff could give us an assignment of which cities each one of us is supposed to contact. And then just have the board member contact that city, you know, even, I mean, maybe offer to go to a city council meeting, but, or maybe just have a conversation with the mayor and council, or maybe Zoom in sometime, but make that contact so it's personal. And then I think just doing that and then asking people asking what are your concerns, same thing we're doing here. What are your concerns? What can we do? I think that is something that direct engagement will be useful. And I think staff is one thing, but I think board members should do it too.
Oh, I like that idea.
We have a monthly mayor's meeting with all the mayors in Washington County. And so that's when I go to them and say, this is what's going on with the league. This is, especially during the legislative session, these are some things you need to know. And then when I get those texts of, you know, call to action or whatever, I send them out to all those mayors so then they can trickle it down to their councils and go from there. It works well.
Just a quick comment I was going to make is I get all the analytics from the emails, and when we send out those media alerts, so I get it like after an hour after we sent it out, after 24 hours. Within 1 hour of sending out the action alert during this session, we had a 42% open rate. That means that our message was getting out. They were passing that along to the folks that needed it. And then also, when I went to Your Land, Your Plan, and I said, how did you hear about this program? So many people said, my mayor forwarded me your email and said I had to go, and so here I am. So thank you for helping us switch out and get your people involved, because the people who have come have really benefited from the training. I just wanted to pass it all.
Let's switch to this mic. So I think that'll solve our room.
Perfect. Yeah.
Excellent. Hi, Meridians. Can you hear us? Can you give us a little nod if you can hear me? Gorgeous. Love to hear it. This is much better for everyone. One thing I'd love to know as I'm getting into this is, are there any like topics or trainings that you'd like us to see? Anything that I could implement or differently, or, if it's like, we really need to learn more about a certain topic within your city, anything like that, that we could do to enhance that.
We need to continue to do training for planning commissioners. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I see where we just need to do more about that. I see in watching some of those meetings, it's like I'm cringing because they should know better, some of this stuff.
Can I add to that? Because I couldn't agree more. We're seeing more and more where our planning commissioners are actually taking over all the administrative decisions. There's some city councils that they don't even make a final decision anymore. And if that's going to happen, I've told my council, we've had training specifically about, the Fifth Amendment and, 14th and how it impacts them. I'm actually having my planning commissioners take the oath of office, so they realize that there's some responsibility behind that when they make those elections.
I was just going to say, I'm glad that there's that dignity class coming up, because I don't know if it's just our city, but it seems like there's been more contention among like the mayor and council members and staff, but also among the public. And so, I don't know if it's just ever since COVID or what, but I think classes like that had a diffuse situation, and the civility.
It's a great idea. Anything?
Ditto.
Anything? Ditto. Okay.
Civility training.
Civility training. How to stop being mean.
The main sections, not just the breakout.
No, well, so Tim Shriver is going to be our keynote, and then we'll do it with, Timmy's going to do a breakout. And then part of me coming into this is figuring out how we actually implement this with all of our cities. And so I'm really excited about that. I might move to the next group, right? Okay. Here's the microphone. Okay, here's the other
All right, who's coming over next?
I guess we'll wait for whoever listed our, any other thoughts on engagement or training while we have?
I will say something really quick. So I have been spearheading the Civility and the Dignity Index, and I've gone to all the training, and I've been up at the university. And the last workshop that I went to, so Tim Shriver has a partner named Tom Roschert, who's his writer, and he conducted the workshop. In the workshop, we had to sit there, and if you had, and they, Sean Newell sat there with me, and if you have a angry council member, had 6 responses that you could come back with that were civil. And so it's not just listening, but you are engaging and coming into like knowing that you have the tools. So anyway, I'm really excited for us to roll it out with the league.
So we used Todd Godfrey to come refresh everybody, actually first time for a lot of them, about Robert's Rules of Order. That was important because when I conduct a meeting now, nobody speaks on the council unless I give them permission to speak on, you don't even answer to the whoever is speaking at the podium, right? Unless I let them respond. And that has solved a lot of those communication problems.
You have my counsel.
Is there an opportunity then to extend that, to have some sort of a training for councils that wouldn't be on council night, obviously, but participate to maybe have a combination of etiquette and civility discussion where staff might put together some presentation, whether it's recorded presentation or a live presentation, that everyone could sign up sometime to have it in their city. I know that's a lot of cities, but we could all then have that. That's a unified message that goes to every city. And that way it doesn't just say, as council person or as a mayor, you're trying to take over all of us and we want to have free speech and, all the other rhetoric that goes out, but it could come as a training course, not as seen as a defensive. I don't know, that's.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, we maybe get straying off thing, but it's interesting to me. I'm fortunate that my council is super collaborative and I never have had an issue of just letting somebody speak up, because nobody's ever pushed the envelope on that, and they are respectful and all that. But the interesting thing would be how to transition if we had a troublesome council member, how to transition from that kind of collegial informality to something that is more formal, which I understand the reason to do that. If you have somebody it's always just either disruptive or disrespectful or won't be quiet, right? How do you transition?
We never had a problem until we did.
Yeah, I guess that's what.
Exactly. They run on these.
Okay, we want to talk about something different now.
Wherever you want.
The easy advocacy.
That's your advocacy.
Okay.
We thought, so we have our policy platform and promote.
One of the things I want to say on advocacy is, this, I don't know if this is actually a goal for the league, but I think it's worth listing it somewhere, is that I would like to see us trying to emphasize more what we talked about in the board meeting. Like, let's wait for the ink to dry. Let's get some data. Let's not pass a new bill until we see how the old ones are shaping up, because we're starting to get data, like on moderate income housing stuff, but they're not waiting for that. And they're continuing to push forward with things that and everybody has their latest, greatest idea. But some of this stuff really does need time to see it's working. And I know we all have a crisis problem we're trying to address, but that's the chicken with its head cut off approach.
I think too, especially if we're talking about advocacy with legislators, right? That's who we're engaging with, is we need to reiterate over and over in our messaging that we really are an advocate, because they see so many activists, and the activists are the angry ones who want their 5 minutes of fame, stamping on the Capitol steps. And we want to be brought to the table as an advocate and a partner. And I think they know that for the most part, but they have both messages coming at them so much. And some councils and some people are very extreme in their thoughts. And so they are shouting more of it as an activist. And we just need to remember maybe to convey that we really are. And I think they, for the most part, see us as that, see us as an advocate.
That begs the question, I guess I could then ask the question. So the question I have on that then is, trying to think of a good way of saying this. How do we train some of our members to be more politically savvy? Is the question I have. I don't know the answer. That's why
We'll pay you $1 million.
No, so I don't know what ideas there are to. The adversary or the activist, yeah.
Because they want to showcase that I'm.
Mhm, yeah.
They really do want to disrupt the process. And so it's a hindrance to you in all the work that you do as an advocate, because then the legislators will say, well, so-and-so came to me from this city and they're up in arms and they're not with you. They're not giving me the same message you are. I don't know how we do that training, but we noticed.
So I think you could have formal training on how to lobby but I think what I've seen is that you're exactly right that they get hit by both kinds of people. But I think that it's much easier for them to listen to the people that are reasonable and that are calm and reasonable and make rational arguments. So I think in spite of the fact that there is this element that we may be concerned about that's disruptive, it's not as effective as you might think.
No, it's not effective.
Yeah.
It just wastes their time. And so they're more likely to say, I'm tired of hearing about this one because I've been inundated with emails or texts or phone calls so for instance, there's been a few bills through the years that legislators have contacted me and said, Carrie, will you be the mediator between this group on my bill? Because I don't want my bill to die. I don't have time to deal with this chaos, but I would like their support eventually, because they're kind of on the edge of support, but they're being radical, right? And so maybe we could figure out a way that if that's the case, if they just need a mediator, and maybe some of our members who also have a passion in that particular area could help be the mediator for the legislator. I've just done it on several bills where they've been asked. Should we see if Mayor Daines wants to weigh in at all? I don't.
Yeah, Mayor Daines, is there anything, we've done a lot of talking. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I'm just listening. I've some good comments. Again, the one concern, it's a little different topic that I had this last session, is there was one bill, the gravel pit bill, that passed so quickly that we didn't even have time to get the information to our senator on how it impacted us. And, so when I let him know about the impact later, he just said, I needed this before I voted. But again, I don't know if there's any way you can, there was a comment made about there should be a waiting time between implementation. I think there should be a waiting time between when a bill is introduced or amended and when they can vote on it. But again, slightly different topic, but that was one frustration during the session.
Yeah, Mayor Daines, and I know I talked to you about, or I emailed with you about this. One of the lessons we as staff learned on the gravel pit bill is we pursued one strategy because we were working through some legal issues. And there was a potential for that bill to die with some legal issues and some stuff from the tax commission. And the lesson we learned there is when someone tells us, this information is not available, you can't find the information, we're going to go find the information. We're going to figure out a way to do it. And we did that eventually on this bill after a month of being told you can't get this information, it's nowhere. We just pulled up our sleeves and figured it out. And so going forward, I think one of the lessons we learned here is we're going to pursue multiple strategies. If we can lay out 5 different strategies on a bill and they don't hurt each other, we're going to be doing that as long as we have the bandwidth to do it. Gravel pits, I still don't know that we necessarily, based on the fact that even the governor with all of the information in front of him did not veto it. I don't know that we would have won on this one necessarily, but we certainly would have approached it with more firepower right out of the gate than we did.
Right. I mean, I just know my senator, when I, emailed him, he just said, I needed this information before I voted yes. And again, we realize that sometimes that's what happened, but, and that is a challenge, but I like your new strategy.
Sorry, Mayor. Part of our advocacy might be a message to our legislators, because I think that bill particularly, and there were some others too that surprised them, where amendments come on the floor and they don't have information. And, there's all kinds of pressure on them to, toe the party line, not, operate with their colleagues and all that. We really kind of need to encourage them to be a little more critical and not just vote for something when they have questions or they don't have all the information. Because that gravel bill, that was exhibit A of that, where they enacted something where they did not realize the financial effect of what they were doing.
And I'll add, I think with that bill in particular, because they knew they should have known there'd be a financial impact. We preached that loud and clear. We just couldn't give them a specific number until we reverse engineered it through all the hoops. But I think we need to figure out how to, rather than just, we say there'll be a big fiscal impact on a lot of cities, we need to be able to hold them accountable to the end of that too, and say, you didn't need to know whether that was $1,001 or $990,000. Either way, they should have been making an informed decision. But I think we need to hold them accountable for reaching out to their cities as well and asking them, have you talked to your city first? Because I'll tell you, there's going to be a fiscal.
Right. Thank you.
Any other thoughts?
Can I ask a little bit about prioritization? Because that's an ongoing challenge we have as staff. like, I think we tend to have a pretty good sense through the policy committee, through the board, about what the ultimate position should be. One of our constant challenges is just figuring out where, like, limited resources, where are we putting our staff time, where are we asking members to engage? Because like during the middle of the session, we had a lot of these kind of mid-priority bills, and we were negotiating a lot, but key to know, like, if there's any recommendations for processes for prioritizing that. We already used the executive board, but we're open to suggestions because that's kind of tricky.
Just going to throw some out here since you bring that up, because I think there's a big disparity between cities that have a 4,000 population and cities that have 100,000. Okay, and they fit in completely different categories. They're dealing with completely different issues. And I realize how difficult it's got to be, right, in the league, because you got to lump them all together when you make your proposal to our legislators, correct? In reality, the issues are different. My growth issues are different in Lehigh than they are in Santaquin, or the way they may be in Kaysville, or, you know, Hookerville, whatever. Right?
Any of the bills.
So it'd be nice if it could be divided up and sent to the individual representatives out of those different size cities.
That was exactly my comment. Was I loved that we did the Slido things at LPC, but the questions are so top, you know, overall, but maybe you can divide it up a little bit and say, okay, if you're a first class city, a second class city, down to, you know, the smallest city, and then each person, each size class of city votes only on theirs, would have more accurate representation, and you could structure your question a little bit different, right? Because you know, I'm a fifth class city. A lot of those questions that come up, I answer, but it doesn't affect my city and the other cities around me that I represent. And so it might be helpful when we're taking these. What do you think? What's the priority right now? We're in the middle of this, but just so that you can have a broader perspective. So when you go in to negotiate that with the legislators, can remind them that this is a bill that represents the entire state, because they're bringing it from their perspective of what city they live in or their district. And so reminding them that this impacts all, and this is what our little cities say, this is our mid cities say, this is what our larger cities say. Maybe it will help craft more meaningful legislation.
So the Slido stuff that was done, I think we should just do more of that, because we were able to, and you could ask, I mean, I guess the question of if that's sophisticated enough of a tool to be able to track what class city you are or something like that, with the answer, that would be really helpful. No, then the other thing is, in terms of priorities, I think if you have questions, you just have to ask us. I mean, we're looking at that too, but sometimes it's tough for us to know that, you know, I mean, a lot of us have one or two things that this is my priority because this is our bill, you know. I had one on you know, recording notices, you know, or bid notices. And that was super important to my city recorder. And so that was a priority for me, but was in the scheme of things, it wasn't super important. So you have to ask us.
I ask one question that might transition us over to organization. So we started using Slido more this year. It's really tricky just with the way Slido is structured to trace these by population. So affirmatively asking, I think, is a good approach. One thing we've done with the priorities survey in the fall late summer/fall that we send is we actually break that down on the back end. It's more labor intensive. We can say, how does a particular caucus feel about this issue? How does this classification of city feel about the issue? And we're sort of trying to do that more, but
surveys, because
Yep.
one of the questions is, what size of city are you? What size of city? And then once you do that, the questions would only populate for that box.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't have to sort through too many questions, it would already be sorted from.
And we can do some of the pre-assortment earlier on, even if they just say their city name, we can let into a database. But I guess the question is like Qualtrics is more labor intensive on members. Do you think, and we've talked with the city managers a lot today about survey fatigue, particularly during the session, do you feel like Qualtrics is a better tool? Do you feel like you have time to answer questions, or your staff have time to answer questions? But
I don't know who you're pointing to. When I asked my city, who's getting the survey? And everybody says, I don't know. So if we knew who was getting the survey, You can follow up. Is it the
Sure.
mayor? Is it, it's not every city has a manager,
True.
right?
Yep.
And is it the clerk? We know every city has a clerk, so should the clerk be not the mayor? Because a lot of the mayors aren't as engaged as you know, our good mayors here. But, we know that, the mayors sometimes get, they're the ones that skip over the lead emails. And, so maybe we should go to the clerks because every single city must have one.
So clearer distribution, clearer communication on the front end.
So that they know, and we could tell them when they come to the conferences, we're sending out this survey so that they know right after this conference where the clerk meetings.
For
We're
it.
gonna be looking for this, filling it out, if you know, ask for or whatever. That way. Maybe are uniformed and thought.
And this is maybe a logistical nightmare, especially during the session, but if there was a way to divide up into the, you know, communities of interest, like, you know, even divide LPC up that way. And you wouldn't have to do it every time, but you might do it in the middle of a session, one meeting, and then you could ask questions like that, you know, to cities of the first class or second, third, whatever. And that'd be a way to do that. If this Slido tool doesn't work, you be able to do that. I know that being rooms at the Capitol and all that stuff is hard, but we should think about how I might be able to do that.
I really appreciate that feedback.
I wonder if in the lead up to the session, if we can, we've done it with the first class cities. If we could use the caucuses in the lead up and solicit some of that information and then almost have report backs in the LPCs and divide up, like you said, at a couple of them. I think there are ways we can utilize those groups better.
That's right. That's what I was going to say is that, you know, some of our discussions like that, even like on local officials day, the discussions become very broad ranging, at least in our group. And we could focus them more and actually this time, I think we did do the Slido and that we could do more of that. We could, just a matter of thinking how to do it better.
Make sure we have in wherever we're at.
That was a good lesson learned.
Yes, indeed.
That's just a logistics thing, right?
Well, let's shift the last part of this discussion over to organization or operations, the internal aspects if I care about and typically ends up squeezed at the end of an agenda. How about that? But I know we had some conversations about this position and like our dues. A lot of the goals we have up there are finance related. Given our organization's history, that number 5 is super important, or that we are just transparent, that we're never in situations like we were in before. And I think we've done a good job about that. But as a board, I mean, do you feel like we're getting the stuff to you, you know, what we're doing financially, that we're, you know, we are being accountable, efficient, and transparent?
Yes, I do. When anybody asks me a question, it's nice to just go right through and basic, you know, what's going on. I'm not gonna say dumb it down. But it's the way to put it. Yeah, that I appreciate.
Well, that's great to hear because we are going through an update of our internal, so both our personnel and our accounting policies and procedures. And the dumbing down of it is really my goal. So I attended a course through the U that's called Transformational Operations and Performance, long title, but it's about getting things efficient. And a thing we ran into back then and organizations have potential to run into is the more complicated and the more you add to your policy every step and the more complicated it becomes, the more often people go, that's hard, I'm not going to do it.
Right. You lose transparency.
And compliance. And so we're working on that now, is to, you know, dumbing it down. And I don't know if I want to be known as like the king of dumbing it down, but I'll take that crown because it ultimately gives you a better.
You know, and I think it's important. People need to be able to engage in that part of the process, right? And that's what we want. It was an organization and they had made it so complicated. And it ended up not being the policy and procedures weren't followed. It was tradition.
well, traditionally, we have done this traditionally, and it wasn't anywhere in the budget. We were allowed documents to do it that way, but because they had it's so cumbersome, they had resorted to, oh, well, we'll just do this, we'll just do that. And then it's history. I'm pretty sure it's in there.
We've heard the term legacy policies, I think is what we heard out of, yeah, and I'm like, ooh, that.
That's
But-
I like that word.
But if they were to look at the policies and go, okay, this is what we're actually doing. Is that legal? Is that in line with code? Then why don't we put this
Why
on
don't we
paper?
adopt it, right?
And now we're actually compliant with our policies.
It's with actual practices. And we have that it's on board. But so I think that you've done a really great job there. I mean, it is hard to raise the dues, hard to have our conference fees be so high. And, you know, all of that, but we recognize we gotta pay for ourselves, and it's just crunching everybody.
A comment kind of going back to the organization. I know in my city right now, I feel like the other day I went to reserve a pavilion and we had like an 18-page and we had to print it out. And I don't know if there's any way to do a policy analysis within a city, because I'm like, this is not very user friendly. Like it should be able to be done online. And if you aren't preparing food, you shouldn't have to, have those other 2 pages, or if you don't have animals there and all of these, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is making me crazy. Now I understand, but some of our residents are complaining about, and so, but it's hard sometimes. They feel like I'm pushing back with staff and I'm like, we've got to come up with a mindness. And so I don't know if you guys, ever have more information about that. I mean, that sounds like a great class you took. It's my city. I feel like
We're in a fortunate position being an interlocal entity that doesn't necessarily have every regulation that a city or a town has. But recognizing that we're a different type of governmental entity, I hope us going through that process will serve as kind of an example process. And we'll get that pushback. You'll get an attorney or an accountant or the insurance guy, like all the people who want to make sure everything is covered. Yep.
Yeah.
And say, well, no, you really can't. And we just have to kind of start thinking of like, can we really can't? Or is this what's been tacked on year after year? And that's what we refer to in that space as branch method, that things just, add on. And every once in a while, you got to go back to root method and be like, okay, we want to be compliant with the law. How can we do, and we want to be transparent and we want to be accountable, but how can we do that as efficiently as possible? And it's not with a bunch of red tape.
Yeah.
See, how are we looking on time here? We're going over time. We never do that.
Yeah.
How can we do that? But Cam did want to mention that rather than coming together to try and discuss these things as a whole and then adopt these or re-adopt these, as these conversations are happening, he said, let us pull this in, distill it, and bring it back at the next one.
We're gonna get just a few minutes.
Yes, we will come back together as a group, but not to go through this discussion, more to wrap up the meeting. I think we can lead by example and start participating here. Yep. Awesome. Thank you very much. Can you help me switch this bad boy out? Do I do anything with these? Turn them off maybe? I'll put them in the thing.
The box, yeah.
The box.
I forgot, I didn't realize it was plugged in.
I didn't think about that. Felt the resistance.
So we're like.
Carson, is this for?
All right, everybody, join us around the table to wrap up, please.
You got your mic on, Cam?
Yes. All right, everybody, join us around the table. We're almost done. Thank you, everybody. I told you we were going to do small groups for 30 minutes. We extended it to 45, and frankly, we could have gone for another couple of hours. But the good news is we have a board dinner tonight. Let me summarize where we're at. Because of the phenomenal feedback we were getting in all three groups, and thank you, everybody, for speaking up and sharing your thoughts. Instead of asking for a motion, Mayor Silvestrini, to reapprove the goals and objectives that you approved last year or modify them, I'm going to recommend that we hold off until the May meeting so that staff can aggregate all the feedback we've received from the three group discussions. And as some of you are driving home, which for some is longer than others, but as you're driving home later this week and over the next couple of weeks, if there are other ideas that come to you in these spaces, let us know. We'll aggregate all the feedback, bring it back to you as part of potential amendments to the goals and objectives, or if the goals and objectives still check all the boxes, we can also amend that UEOC framework for you to approve those two pieces in May. Does that approach work with everybody instead of asking for a motion now? I'm seeing enough head nods around the room.
Yeah, no, we could reconvene after dinner if you'd rather.
Don't tempt me.
No, I think that sounds good. And I think that's everything other than we're going to meet on May 15th and consider the budget and then consider it and then adopt it, I guess, on June 12th. And those meetings are going to be to be determined, right?
Yeah. So one of them will be at the league office. One may be at Mill Creek Common because we try to host a board meeting at the presidential city each year. We have an LPC on May 15th, so we'll do the morning board meeting and then LPC midday. Just a reminder on the timing, the UEOC will finalize their priorities May 31st. So over the next couple of days, please talk to your fellow cities. We'll try to get a sense from them of potential priorities. We used Slido with the city managers earlier to try to get feedback. We'll be asking for feedback during caucus meetings tomorrow in our communities of commonality, so that when Mayor Ramsey goes to that May 31st UEOC meeting, she's prepared with feedback from the board and from the membership on priorities. Then the UEOC will not meet officially between May 31st and August 30th. But during that 3 months is when all the subgroups will be meeting. Legislative interims will still be meeting throughout the summer. And so there'll be a lot of moving pieces, but that's why we wanted to use this meeting and the next meeting to really organize ourselves accordingly. Mayor Ramsey, any final thoughts UEOC related?
It's critical, and thank you to everybody who's going to weigh in. There's plenty of you who will be weighing in who don't even know yet. Hopefully it's such a big event. So we'll just keep working closely.
And send all your good thoughts and prayers to Mayor Ramsey for her to have the fortitude to represent us in that body again. So, okay.
Great. So Mayor Silvestrini, I'll wrap by just saying thank you for taking time away from your families and your day jobs and your night jobs to spend the next couple of days with us here in sunny St. George. We hope you have a wonderful conference. Please engage with your fellow members and report back to us as staff what you hear, what goes well, what can be improved. And thank you for your leadership and your engagement and really your passion for the league and for local government.
It's 4:30. I'll take a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. See you at dinner at 5:30. Nick?
Dinner is, and I'm.
Hold on, sorry. Here's the announcement of the dinner location. I forgot to say it. So Nick,
So you should have a calendar invite with the address in there as you get into your car, but it is at the Aragosta Restaurant at 1386 East, 100 South,
Yep, at 5:30.
5:30. Yes. The Aragosta, excuse me, restaurant at 1386 East, 100 South.